If, like so many others in our time, you're wondering why there are so many contradictions in Christianity and in Christian behavior, and what you see in churches and what Jesus teaches, you must realize that those contradictions begin with the fact that all of us are filled with such contradictions. The revelation puts a mirror up to us, and just like the more ancient teachings, we are called to know ourselves in a new way. All of us, religious and otherwise, take ourselves for granted. Always look to the outer, both as a source of evaluation and as condemnation. In other words, as Jesus says, we see the bit of dust in our brother's eye and miss the plank in ours. We justify ourselves and judge others. We miss seeing the objective reality that we are a part of. See through a glass darkly and go to our graves that way. But it is possible to break that cycle if we are willing to bear the pain of being honest enough with ourselves to see who we are. And if you do that in a sustained way, without judging yourself, just trying to see, you begin to discover amazing contradictions. Take a simple example like deciding you'll get up early in the morning. That evening, you know what you want to do, you feel right about it, you prepare, go to bed, to get up according to plan. When that alarm clock rings, the person who wakes up has no desire to get out of bed. There's another you in there. And if you begin to follow that way of perceiving, you'll see that every moment there's another you. There is no central, united self in charge. Notice that we are stimulus response. We are always reacting to what's happening outside of us, so that from one moment to the next we can't say what state of mind we will be in. We can't retain a consistent, united form of behavior because we are so puppets on a string, so dependent on what is going on, both inside and outside of us. If you've had a bad dream, if a thought goes through your head in the shower, your state changes. We are very fragile in that way. We are fractured. We are multiple. We are legion. The whole purpose of true teachings is to reunite us so that we can bring together the core of our true self, rise up out of that brokenness, and enter the nobility of truly being creatures of free will, creatures in the image of their Creator. One of the blinders for us is that we have a strange psychological way of not seeing these contradictions. So we may say we're a nice person, even though our spouse knows different when we're in a bad mood, but we have set those blinders, those buffers, to keep out that which we don't want to see. This is the normal condition of the human being. This is everybody. It's a condition that many teachers have called sleep, because we are so unaware. Our attention is so diverted and fragmented, and there is nobody home. To be home, to be present to our reality, there has to be a step back. Mystics call it detachment. A position of conscious presence that is not dragged around by whatever's going on. That does not have the rug pulled out from under it at any moment, and that is dependable, both for God and for ourselves. That has to be created. We don't come with that. And life inspires to keep us from that place of centering. All the spiritual disciplines return to this: meditation, prayer. All of these methods and habits and ways of life offered to us by the teachings lead us into a centeredness within, in a place of inner quiet, inner sanctuary that is sealed off from the outside. It doesn't mean that we no longer feel or empathize. In fact, we can empathize more because we're no longer victims of our own reactions. This is a step-by-step process. First, we have to see our reactions, see our condition, and slowly pull out of it until we have strengthened that place of observation, that place of centering and presence, where ultimately Spirit will dwell. You can imagine our noise and our distraction that cannot be a place for God within. The mystics tell us you must be empty so that you may be filled. You must be empty of our imagination, our worries, our fears, our noise, our tensions, our self-absorption, all of this dirt that has to be cleaned off the window is during the process so that the sun can shine through. We can be transparent to the divine, says Godfrey Durkheim. Imagine that, transparent to the divine. Let something higher come through us because we are no longer dominated by the little self, the petty self, the infantile self. We have allowed the true self to come forth. All the teachings that are authentic in the world hint to this, and at the center of it is the revelation of Christ. You'll find that, for instance, in the parable of so-called prodigal son, we have a teaching that deals with going our own way. The son asks for his inheritance, thanks the father for life and what he has been given, and takes off on his own away from God. He goes into a far country. That far country is the world, where we are in exile, spiritual beings lost in a world of materialism, disconnected from our source, no longer dependent as we should be on that which is greater than we are, thinking we are independent, cut off. You might say that sin, missing the mark, is ultimately self-exclusion from the presence of God. And in that far country, what happens when we have spent all we have, when we have tried everything, used the gifts wrongly? There's a great famine. There's a spiritual famine, an emptiness, which we all know very well. And prodigal son, who is all of us, human condition, has to sell himself out to the lowest possible position to survive, feeding pigs, which in Jewish teaching has to do with the fact that pigs were meat for idols, for pagan idols, and therefore there was a curse against whoever worked with pigs. So it represents lowest bottom, reaching bottom. And even there, he would be glad to be fed by the husks of the pigs, that which is not even suitable for humans. Those husks that cannot nourish, that are not for us, are those illusory desires of ours. those illusory needs that cannot feed us. And so what happens? The scriptures tell us that he comes to himself. The Greek means he comes into himself. He reconnects with his deeper self. The surface self, the persona, that which just wanted things for itself, self-gratification, is dropped for the deeper self. And in coming into himself, he awakens and he says, I will go home to my Father. I will go home. Each of us is called in life to go home spiritually to our center, to the presence of God. And he says, I'll go home and tell him I've sinned against him. I'm not worthy to be his son. Just receive me as a servant. Imagine that. Going to the family home and being a servant there because of the wrong living, the wrong thinking that has gone on. And then we have the ultimate revelation of the Christ. While he was far off, while you and I are just beginning to pull out of the mud of our mistakes, of our ignorance, while we're just beginning to turn towards the way back to God, the Father sees him and runs towards him. Doesn't just acknowledge him, runs towards him. God rushes towards us. That's the kind of love that is in the nature of the God revealed by Jesus. That glorious, unconditional, wondrous love. That the littlest effort we make to turn back to right living, to reconnection with God, will bring God to us. Promise of the gospel. And of course we know the Son says, I'm not worthy, and the Father calls for the mantle, the ring, and the feast. For my son was lost, is now found, was dead, now is alive. That is our story. That is the heart of the gospel. That is the ultimate revelation of Jesus. Our destiny is to find our way back spiritually to the presence of God, who receives us with this amazing love, amazing grace. And we enter a way of life that is fulfilling, joyful, grateful, and able to spread goodness in the world. May that be your destiny as well. God bless you.